Hello, one and all, and welcome to the podcast we call the Fantastival with myself, Stephen Nussbaum, in the podcast where I invite my guests to come on, talk to me all about their musical tastes, their memories, their experiences, and they get to collate their fantasy festivals, which I have christened a Fantastival. We are now on episode number 107, now in mid-October. Unbelievably, I can almost hear those Christmas bells are ringing. Before we start this one, a massive thank you to Sam Shiner, who was my guest in episode 106. Sam absolutely lives and breathes music, such a massive music fan. Thanks to everyone who's listened to that one. And if you're listening to this podcast for the first time, please go back and give Sam a listen straight after this one. She was an absolutely astounding guest in 106. But like I said, this is 107, and I'm delighted to introduce two gents from the awesome Gallagher's Green, a great band who I've been listening to all week. Ladies and gentlemen, it's lead singer Jon and bass player Ian.
Hi Steve, thanks for having us on, mate.
How are you doing, Steve?
Very well. Lovely to have you gents on the podcast. Like I said, I've been listening to your stuff, really enjoying it. I'm looking forward to hearing all about the band and how you started and where you're at now and the future. But before we do, I always like to check in with my guests about how they've been. It was Mental Health Day last week. I think that's very important. So let's start with you, Johnny. Jon, how you been, mate?
Yeah, really good. Mental health, really important to me. I'm ex-RAF, and that was one of my roles, was a mental health sort of practitioner, looking after all the boys and girls. And in this band, we check in on each other. We obviously have got a group chat, but sometimes somebody might go a bit quiet, and we'll just check in on each other. So we're really it's massively important to us, mental health. But yeah, I'm good.
And Ian, how have you been, buddy?
Yeah, I'm good. Keeping busy, but it's big thing is obviously the band, and just we're in a good place with it, especially over the weekend. We're pretty good at turning negatives into positives, so we had a gig cancelled very late, but we ended up working on 2 new songs for album number 3. So as long as we keep spinning it in a positive way like that, I'm very happy, mate.
Great stuff. That's always great to hear that, and I can see 2 very smiley chaps looking at me, so I'm sure it's going to be a very happy and positive podcast. So, gents, how did you both get into playing music? Ian, I'll start with you. I always say the bass player is almost the unsung hero of a band. So, Ian, tell me about your musical journey.
Started out about 20 years ago playing the guitar. I wanted to play the guitar. I was getting into Oasis. I kind of got to them a little bit late. I only really got to know Oasis on the second album, and I had to work backwards and go on Fine, Definitely, Maybe. And a friend of mine, old school friend of mine, said, I'm starting a band. I want you to play in the band. I want you to play the bass. I said, all right. I didn't even know what a bass guitar was. And I went and bought an acoustic guitar. And he was like, oh, I thought you was getting a bass guitar. He had to explain the difference. So I really started playing the guitar. That's what I wanted to do. But I initially started out already lined up to play bass in a band. That didn't go anywhere at all. And then I joined the RAF and kind of put the guitar down for a while. And it was pure fluke. I ended up going to see a band of a friend of mine, another guy from school. And he come up to me, he said, I know you're not a bass player, but I'm basically firing the bass player. Do you want his job? And he knew I wasn't a bass player. Most guitar players can turn their hand to bass. And it was bad timing because about a week after that, I was off to Iraq. It's 2008 as a deployment with the RAF. And it was out there that I met Jon. And I got chatting to him. Same kind of music, same tastes. Both, wanted to be in bands. And he was saying to me, go for it. Go and join that band as soon as you get back, if the offer's still there. And so that's what I did. And then started writing songs for that band. Jon kept an eye on us, what we were doing. And then, eventually that band fell apart. Jon was in a band at the time, which fell apart. And he kind of, we went to a gig, Guns N' Roses, Slane Castle. And he said to me, where are you at with that band? I said, no, I think it's over. He says, why don't me and you join forces, put all our songs together, to start our own band, which is where we're at today. That's Gallagher's Green. That was 2017.
Great answer. Great stuff, Ian. Jon, how was your music journey? Obviously, Ian's mentioned you as in other bands. Was it always your aim to be a singer and rhythm guitarist from an early age?
I'm a singer. I don't know how I always end up being a singer, but I never wanted to be. I started life as a bass player because I heard Appetite for Destruction. I think I was 11. And I was like, my cousin played it for me. The first ever album I heard was Motorhead Overkill. I was like, what is this? And he goes, it's called heavy metal. I was like, it blew my mind. And then Appetite for Destruction, that came out. And I just saw the video for Welcome to the Jungle. and I saw Duff McKagan playing a P-bass, and I went, I want to do that, whatever he's doing. And then that carried on, just getting into more and finding out more and more about rock music and all these different bands. And when I was 15, I played my first ever gig in a pub in Belfast. It was called the Rosetta Bar. It's not there anymore. And some lads in school, one of them came up to me and said, you can sing, I've heard you singing. Do you want to join my punk band called Anti-Climax, spelt as in your mum's sister, Anti-Climax? And so basically I found myself standing on a stage in front of all these people singing Ramones songs and Sex Pistols songs, but it gave me the bug, and just went from band to band. I played in all sorts of bands, flipping thrash metal bands. There was a thrash metal band called Cyanide, all sorts of bands. And then 95, I was in an originals band, but it all kind of fell apart, and I basically then joined up in the late 90s, like Ian did as well, sort of put the guitar down and gave up on it. But then I was actually I went out to New York to do the New York City Marathon. I think it was 2011, but Hurricane Sandy had hit. So we found ourselves in New York, a group of us, kind of wandering about, couldn't do the marathon. And I wandered into a music shop, bought a guitar, brought it back with me, and started a band with a few guys in work. I started doing covers and stuff like that. And that was it. And all this time, obviously meeting Ian in 2008 in Iraq and talking about it, it was sort of, I'd put a sticking plaster over the music thing, but it was sort of picking it off. Ian and I kept in touch, sent each other our songs to critique each other. And like he said, 2017, I found myself without a band. We were standing watching Guns N' Roses at Slane Castle in Dublin, and we just turned and said, why don't we start a band? I've got a band name. We've got all these songs, and the rest is history. We've been hard at it ever since.
Great stuff. I love the way your stories have intertwined. So you said you had a band name then. So where did the band name come from?
Yeah, so when I was growing up in Northern Ireland, there's a big cigarette manufacturer next to my hometown called Gallagher's, and they used to have a brand of cigarettes, two brands of cigarettes, one called Gallagher's Deluxe Blue, Gallagher's Deluxe Green, but people used to refer to them as Gallagher's Blue and Gallagher's Green. I remember hearing it. Like, old guys would smoke it, and they would go into a shop, give us 20 Gallagher's Green. I don't know why, it just stuck in my head. And obviously Ian's called Gallagher, so when I put the name forward to him, he was like, yeah, absolutely.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. It's all about me.
So, and the thing is, there are no band names left. All the .coms are gone, so I think we were lucky to get that one in. And very quickly set up the website and the domain, so it was safe. But yeah, Gallagher's Green, that's where it came from, named after a packet of cigarettes.
And as well as the both of you, Ian, there's another two members of Gallagher's Green, right? So Gallagher's Green are a four-piece.
Yeah, we've got Tom and Tom. Tom is lead guitar player, and we kind of had other members in the band, but it wasn't really coming together. And then 2020, that was COVID, weren't it? The Christmas before that, we realised that the lead guitar player we had wasn't really up to the job, and we'd kind of set a date for recording the album. So we just put an advert out, and luckily Tom Stretton answered the ad, and yeah, he was sending us stuff straight away. Like one of our songs, Just a Dream, he took a real shine to that. He recorded it on his own little recorder, put a little solo of it, sent it to us, and we was like, yeah, this guy gets it. And then went rehearsing with him and a friend of his who was a drummer. And that ended up becoming the band. We also had another drummer who was in the makeup, but that didn't work out. So that became the four of us about 2 months before COVID hit. So we was a bit unlucky with the timing, but like we always do with this band, we just made the most of it. So we were just emailing songs to each other. Tom was working away on all his lead guitar parts, and it kind of came together. And then this year, when did other Tom Leather join Jon? Was it? He's only been in the band a few months, hasn't he?
Yeah, I was trying to work that out today. It's all a bit of a blur, but yeah, I'd say 4 months probably.
4 months, something like that, yeah. So he came along because I think we put an advert out for a drummer last year, about a year ago, and he was one of the guys who answered, but he answered the ad a little bit late, about 2 weeks after we already found somebody, so I just kept his number. And then when we found ourselves needing a drummer, April, May time or whenever it was, I just rang him up. I says, look, do you remember me? You rang up asking about the band and the position had been filled. It's open again. Are you interested? And I'll tell you what, he's just taken it with both hands, hasn't he, Jon? He's embraced his band fully. He loves this band. And is working his backside off to make sure he's absolutely up to speed with all the songs.
Love it.
It's difficult for him as well because he's come in. We've recorded 2 studio albums with 2 separate drummers, and he's had to learn their styles, their fills, put his own spin on it. But to be fair to him, he came in and impressed us because we were just shouting out song titles and he was on it. And he's like a human metronome. He just does not drop a beat. And it's so much easier for us, me as a rhythm guitar player and Ian as a bass player, in a rhythm section, when you've got a drummer you don't have to worry about. He takes control of that. We can relax and concentrate on what we're meant to be doing.
Absolutely.
Drummer.
And it's been quite a prolific output from you guys, from what I can see and what's available on social. So, like, 2 singles in 2020, 3 singles and an album in 2021. And this year, you're smashing it with another 3 singles. So the output and the creativity with the band seems like it's at quite a high level. And it's, right, let's get this out and then move on to the next one.
Yeah,
the thing is, I don't think we ever planned on getting the second album recorded quite so quick after the first album, but the songs were just there, and we was throwing them in the sets. We've done about a gig a month pretty much since COVID lockdowns ended, and we've just been throwing them in the sets, rehearsing them, and if they're working live, you know, we know they're going down really well, getting a good reaction. So it just, in no time at all, we just had the second album written. I think we surprised ourselves. Gone in the studio, got it all done, all recorded. So there'll be 1 more single coming out before Christmas, a song called Here With Me, and then 2 more singles after Christmas, and then the album. So yeah, the output is pretty strong.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, let's talk about the first album, because I think it's a great album and we should definitely push it, because as it stands, it's the only album that people can hear. So first album 2021, Lucky 13, quite a few of the singles on that album. So tell us about Lucky 13. I mean, how did you find that? Was that all together in a studio, or did you have to do your parts for that separately, given COVID was about at that time?
I think the nucleus of that album was going back to talking about putting the band together. Ian had some songs, I had some songs, and we went, right, okay, let's build upon this. And then when we started writing together, like one of the most popular song on it, Ballad of the One-Eyed Bastard, that was one night Ian just said, I've got this verse in my head, I need to get this verse out. And he was plugging away at it. We plugged away at it. Next thing we know, the chorus came out, and it's blown up. People just love that song. And it seems to be, once we write together, or he sends me an idea, I put my bit on it, or vice versa, it's even better. And a lot of people have said about that album, it's very live sounding, but that's what we wanted. We wanted 4 guys in a room. That's what we told the producer. Old school recording. And as I said, it's varied. You've got touches of Americana, you've got touches of folk music, you've got straight up punky rock songs, you've got what some people might call classic rock ballads, I don't know. But it's a very varied album, and there's a couple of nice, delicate acoustic tracks with a friend of ours who did the female harmonies on it. It is a great album, but like I said, we didn't really know what we were doing when it came to PR and stuff. We just put it out. But people have found it, word of mouth, and it's grown. It's had over, I think itself, it's had 120,000 streams alone on Spotify, something like that, 115, 120. And it's popular in random places, South America, Japan, the States. And that's just down to word of mouth, people hearing it on a radio station and our podcasts, and it's just going out there.
Amazing.
Yeah, we were the first band into Blueprint Studios when lockdowns ended. I think it was July. I think we was originally booked in February or March. I can't remember, but everything had to shut down, obviously. And then we were pestering them, saying, we're ready to do this album, you know, we need to get in there. So literally as they opened the doors when lockdown ended, we went in, and I think we did 6 days and recorded 13 songs in 6 days, which looking back now is probably a bit crazy. But like Jon said, this is our first time doing everything. We were just learning as we go. But it was like live sound, 4 guys in a room, smashing away at the songs until we get what we're happy with, really. But we absolutely loved it. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves, but I think we did what we set out to achieve.
Yeah, you absolutely did, and it's a great album, and obviously we'll push the music a bit later. So 2022 hasn't slowed down at all for you guys. 3 singles so far. You've had Catch the Sun, which is a great track, The Way We Used to Be, which is awesome as well, and your new single Memphis, that seems to have gained a lot of popularity. It's been really popular from what I can see on social, and it's got quite a big meaning for you guys, right? So I'm aware that every song means a lot to you, but I think Memphis probably has an even deeper meaning based on what I'm hearing about it. So tell us about Memphis.
Yeah, so obviously Ian's still serving in the RAF. I left the RAF about 18 months ago, and the backstory of us meeting in Iraq and all that. But just before I'd left the RAF, it was all the COVID times. We were trying to keep all the boys and girls busy and interested. So I invited an old friend of mine to give them what we call a fireside chat, where he'll talk about his experiences. And this individual basically was serving as an explosive detection dog handler with the RAF in Afghanistan, attached to the Royal Marine Commandos. And sadly, in 2011, he stood on an IED, and he ended up, the injury caused him to lose his lower half of his left leg. So he was talking about this, and I wasn't really prepared for it. I was just listening, and you could have just heard a pin drop in the room. Everyone was just so moved by his story of the incident itself, the treatment on the battlefield, the helicopter extraction where he was injected with all sorts of chemicals and morphine and all sorts, to then eventually rehabilitation and having to leave the service earlier than he'd ever expected. And it was such a moving story, and it just kept going around my head. And then basically the melody sort of came, and I sent a rough demo to Ian, as we always do. We bounced off each other and then brought it in front of the band. And again, it's one of those ones that when we're out playing it live, it just goes down so well. So obviously I was very nervous about sending the finished article to my friend, because he had no idea it existed. I thought, flip, am I going to trigger his PTSD or any of this type of stuff? But he loves it. He says he's very humbled by it. And we're just glad that the organisation, the charity that helped him and his wife when he was forced to leave the Royal Air Force, we're going to raise some money for them with our Just Giving page, and any merchandise or anything, hard copies of our first album that we sell, that's all going to go to 100% going to go to the RAF Benevolent Fund, as are the ticket sales from the charity gig we're doing in Sure 5 Studios in Oldham on Saturday the 12th of November. So basically we're going to get as much money, and also it's great that we're raising money, but it's mainly to tell all the wounded veterans out there, all the boys and girls who are suffering mental health or physical injuries, that people still care about them. So yeah, both of us obviously RAF, and it's very close to our hearts.
Great stuff. And any donation, I was looking at your LinkTree page, and I can see there's quite a few ways that you can donate to the charities or buy tickets for the gig or buy the single. So anyone that is connecting a chord with, who might not be aware of where the money is going or how to donate, can find all that information on your LinkTree, right, or on your social media pages. Yeah.
The best place to go, Steve, is just to our website, gallahersgreen.com, and all links are on there. There's a link to the Just Giving page. There's a link to Spotify, ticket sales. Everything is on in our website there.
Great stuff. So you've mentioned that this band started at a Guns N' Roses gig. You've mentioned being guitar driven by the Oasis albums. What kind of music are you into, gents? It sounds like it's quite rock and heavy specified. Is that the kind of music you're into, or are there other genres that do it for you? What about you, Ian?
I think, I'm more like indie rock. So Oasis, that opened the doors to Stone Roses, that kind of band. They're probably my two main bands. I do love Guns N' Roses as well. Guns N' Roses are probably the theme that runs through most of us in this band. But yeah, very, very much kind of indie rock for me. I'm into people like Jerry Cinnamon, I don't know what you call that, indie folk rock. But they're my big bands. I'm not quite as heavy as the stuff that maybe Jon and Tom are into.
So Jon, what are you into? Bit more of the heavier stuff?
So I think that the heaviest thing I would ever go for would be like your early Metallica, your Master of Puppets, that type of era. But I was always Stones, Rolling Stones, Guns N' Roses. I love Foo Fighters, and I generally don't listen to the same thing all the time. I'm really into the Americana at the minute. Jason Isbell. We've got a song on the second album. It's just an album track called Find Your Way Back to Me, and it's a very Americana song. And I think I was trying to harness my inner Jason Isbell there. But anything like that. I love punk. I love Social Distortion. I love the Pistols. I love the Clash. Punky stuff I like folk music. But yeah, generally, like Ian said, the main vein that runs through this band, like Tom, the lead guitarist, he's massively into AC/DC, Motley Crue, Guns N' Roses, all the heavy stuff. But then our drummer, he loves his Iron Maiden, but equally loves Mike Oldfield and loves Queen. So and when we all get together, you can hear those things coming out. It's really, really interesting.
A nice little blend of different influences.
Big on Kasabian as well. To be honest, I don't know. I played Jon a song in the car the other day, and he was a bit like, "Yeah, not my cup of tea." I always thought it was going to be kind of an indie rock band. That was my thing. And then when Jon and Tom teamed up on me and told me that's not going to happen, we're going to be a rock band. I just had to accept it. And move on. No, I love it.
You can definitely hear elements of indie in your music, definitely.
Good.
Yeah, and that's the thing on both albums. Anyone that's heard the second album, Friends and Family, have said the same as the first. It's so varied. There's so many different genres and flavours. Because nobody wants to listen to the exact same formulaic thing on an album. I don't anyway. I like variation. Got to take people on a little bit of an adventure. I think.
Do you know what's funny, Steve? If you listen to, I'm not massively into punk, but Jon is, and I'm more indie than Jon ever will be. And if you listen to the songs, probably on both albums, there's some songs that sound like he should have written them because they're a bit punky, and some songs that he's written that sound like I should have written them because they're a bit more indie. So there's obviously a mix of styles and things going on in there. We must be picking things up off each other.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll be doing it subliminally without even realising that you're doing it, which is always a sign of a great band, I think. So at the moment, I'm listening to the new October Drift album, which is blowing my mind. I had Kieran on in episode 85. Their new album came out last week. I'm loving it. What are you guys listening to at the moment? Anything for you, Ian? Anything that's rocking your socks at the moment?
Yeah, I've listened to them before, but it's a band that who are supporting us at the gig on the 12th next month called Superlatives. Yeah, I've just been going through their stuff. I've heard a few of the big songs, but then they went on the back burner and I was listening to other things, especially all the new Kasabian stuff. But I've gone back to them this week just because the new single is just an absolute banger. And then I've been working through some of their songs. So really, really good band. Really, really happy that they're playing that gig with us. I just can't wait to watch their set, to be honest. And then, we get the pleasure of playing after them. So, yeah, that's where I'm at the minute. And they do remind me of, they've got a bit of Kasabian in them, and I think a little bit of Reverend and the Makers as well. They're the kind of three bands that have been hovering around recently.
Great stuff. Jon, anything you're listening to at the moment?
Yeah, I've mentioned Jason Isbell. I think he's an amazing songwriter, and he's not, people trying to put him in he's country or he's Americana. He's got some heavy rocky songs as well, but also a couple of albums I'm listening to at the minute. Nick Drake, Pink Moon, I love that album. It's so chilled out and acousticy. But we supported, do you remember Proud Mary?
Yes.
They released Same Old Blues back in the 90s, and we supported them at Gorilla. I think it was last year. Must have been last year.
Last September.
Yeah, and Ian introduced me to that album. I didn't even know it existed. I'd missed it. And I was like, what is this? Why is this not massive? And we supported them in Gorilla. It was amazing. Their fans really supportive of us. And the band were amazing. They were just so chilled out with us. And they treated us as equals, if you like. And that was such a nice experience. But that album, definitely, I've been listening to that a lot. It's just some amazing tunes on it.
That is a great album. Kimberly, who's a massive new music fan, I had her on the podcast. One of her opening act was Proud Mary, and that got me back into listening to that Proud Mary album. So that was a great shout.
Yeah.
So you're obviously men of impeccable taste so far from the acts that you've mentioned. So let me take you back now. I imagine we're roughly the same age because I think there's a lot of Oasis-y crossover. Let me take you back to when you were younger boys, maybe a bit more hair, maybe curtains, maybe an India haircut, maybe a more metal haircut. What was your first record, Ian? Let me go with you first, Ian. What was your first record and do you remember buying it and what it was?
Yeah, it's a strange one. It was actually George Michael, older album. And it's a bit annoying because there's one song on it. It was big at the time. It's called Fast Love. This was when he was doing his very solo stuff and he changed his image and everything. And I got the album and it wasn't on the album. The single that was put out was actually a remix version of it, and it was a lot faster and it was a lot more kind of poppy version than the version on the album. So yeah, it was a bit of a letdown really. That first album, I couldn't even tell you what the next album was after that, but that was about that time when I started found the Oasis thing, and every week I'd go past my local record shop and buy one of their singles just because the B-sides were so good, until I had pretty much caught up with everything that was out at the time.
Great stuff. Jon, you remember your first album and what that was?
Yeah, I do indeed. I remember going down to a shop called the Pop Inn, and I bought Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast, and just thought I was like the coolest metalhead in town. But I think that album still stands up, Run to the Hills, and there's so many great songs on it. But yeah, unashamedly, nothing wrong with a bit of Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast.
Ah, good stuff. I love it. So this podcast is all about you guys getting to collate your fantasy festivals. Have you gents been to many? Are you big festival goers? Are you a fan of the festival?
You know, I don't think I've ever been to a major festival. I've always gone to like small clubs and theatres, and obviously a few arena gigs, but I'd love to go to Glastonbury, but I've never been.
No, same as me. I've never done a proper festival. I've only done the one day things where you might get 4 or 5 bands in a day. To be honest, I'll probably just make an absolute mess of it if I went to a proper festival. I'd get absolutely smashed on the first night. I'd find myself wake up under a hedge on the second day, miss half the gig, something like that. So I've never done it. I'm probably scared to do it. But yeah, Glastonbury's one day. And I'm hoping that when we do Glastonbury, we're on the other side of the stage playing. So maybe that would be nice.
Yeah, love it. What about gigs, gents? Do you guys have a favourite gig? Or do you have a favourite gigs at all?
Of all time.
Go on, mate.
Yeah, I remember going to see Skid Row. I'm using all metal references here for some reason. I don't know why, but obviously that's coming out. But yeah, Skid Row in Belfast in '91. That just blew my mind. They were just mental. People were stage diving, jumping. They were supposed to be like a glam hair metal band, but they weren't. They were punk. And after the gig, they came out and invited loads of kids backstage to meet them. They were just really cool and down to earth. So yes, for me, Skid Row '91. And obviously we've seen Guns N' Roses at the start of this European tour, and then at the end of the European leg of the tour in London. They were great gigs as well.
Brilliant. What about you, Ian?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the best gigs I've ever been to was the Stone Roses when they come back and they played Heaton Park. Because of when I got into music, the Stone Roses they'd already split up. So I was like, it's never going to happen. And the amount of abuse they were giving each other, I just thought it's just never ever going to happen. So when it did happen and I got tickets to go there, that was just mind blowing. And Ian Brown's vocals were actually bang on point that night. So I know they're not always. So I was chuffed a bit for that. But then one of the best gigs, I was only chatting to someone about this yesterday. One of the best gigs I ever went to was watching Reverend and the Makers at the Ritz in Manchester. And I think it was a Thursday or a Friday because there was a 10 o'clock curfew. And they still didn't start till 9 o'clock. But it was the best hour of music I think I've ever had in my entire life. The place was bouncing. It was absolutely bouncing. It was just track after track after track. Yeah, absolutely blew my mind. And then the lead singer, he ends up outside with an acoustic guitar. And it was like the Pied Piper of Hamelin walking through the streets of Manchester. It was bizarre, but it was good. It was very, very good.
Sounds ace. Love to hear about Skid Row on here. Skid Row still releasing new music. Released a new single last week, for God's sake. And they're touring now as well. Reverend and the Makers just announced a new tour as well.
Yes,
I've seen the Skid Row bit. I was hoping they were going to bury the hatchet with Sebastian Bach and all make friends again because he was an amazing frontman. But I think they've had a few singers now. I don't think they'll ever go back to the original lineup, unfortunately. But yeah, they're still doing it.
Yeah, it's always great when it happens. Maybe one day Sebastian Bach joins Skid Row, or maybe you put him in your fantasy festival if Skid Row are lucky enough to make it. I guess we'll find out very shortly. Yeah. So, like I said at the start of this podcast, the Fantastival Pod is all about getting our guests to collate their fantasy festival. So Ian and Jon can choose any 5 acts, one of whom must play one of their albums in full, and an encore which all 5 acts can perform together at the end of their fantasy festival. So I mentioned at the beginning I had Sam Shiner on. She was my guest in episode 106. She created her Shine Fest fantasy festival. See what she did there? Shine Fest. Very clever, nice. Sam. In her opening slot, she went for Amil and the Sniffers making their Fantastival debut. For her Super Seconds act, she had the War on Drugs making their first Fantasy Festival appearance and had them play their album I Don't Live Here Anymore. For a Midway Madness slot, she picked Fontaines DC, who made their second Fantasy Festival appearance. In her pre-headline slot, she went for Oasis, who have had somewhat of a rejuvenation on this podcast. Barely picked at the start on the first 100 episodes and have been picked a fair bit over the last few episodes. And for a headline act, she picked Queen, making their 7th Fantasy Festival appearance, and had them all play Bohemian Rhapsody together to close her Fantasy Festival. So a great Fantasy Festival there from Sam. Before we talk about your acts, gents, we have to give your fantasy festival a name, and we have to find a venue to hold it. So I don't know who's decided this from a band demographic, whether it's been a joint venture or one of you's led it. But what are you going to call your fantasy festival, gentlemen?
I think I've got the name here, John.
Yeah, go for it. I can think of one.
because we're Gallagher's Green and it's the 2 Gs. The festival should be called the G Spot.
Yes,
love it. And the best thing about it is it'll just be full of women because no bloke will be able to find it.
well recovered. I thought you were going to go with a misogynistic comment.
Brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff. This is why I never asked to see the lineups or the titles beforehand, so I can react naturally. That did make me laugh out loud. All right, so we've got the G Spot, gents. Where are you going to hold the G Spot? You can hold it anywhere you want. You can go to the Manchester Ritz. We can hold it in Belfast. We can go back to Slane Castle. Anywhere in the world, we will follow to find the G Spot. So where are you going to take us, gentlemen?
I think it's whenever I watch concerts from the River Plate Stadium in Argentina, the crowd, or I think South American crowds, just go berserk anyway. But you just see that bounce that they do, and I think the atmosphere is 70,000 plus people. I love my intimate gigs, theatres and clubs, but I think that would be something else if at River Plate Stadium.
Great stuff. All right, so we're heading to Argentina, the River Plate Stadium. We're going to host the G Spot. Before we talk about your 5 acts, gentlemen, are there any acts who you want to mention quickly who you love, but for whatever reason aren't making it into your fantasy festival?
If you don't make it in, then you're just not good enough and you don't deserve mentioning, I'm afraid.
Skirted very nicely
around the question.
I was going to mention that, like, when I thought about it afterwards, I never got to see Nirvana. I don't know why I didn't go. They came to Belfast. I didn't go for some reason. And I loved Nirvana. But, yeah, that would be the one that sort of got away on this list. I'd love to have seen Nirvana.
Okay, so Nirvana are missing out, but we do have 5 acts to play. So, 2:00 then, River Plate Stadium. So, gents, who's going to open your fantasy festival?
I've thought about this, Ian. And, yeah, obviously in an ideal world, we'd put ourselves on the list and we'd headline. But I still want to play, but then I want to get smashed and watch the rest of the band. So I think we should have put... Or is that a bit egotistical?
That's the best thing to do. You get your gig out of the way, and then you can chill out. You've done your bit. You can watch everybody else and get on it. It's genius.
Yeah.
So Gallagher's Greening, right? We're going to open the G Spot. We're going to play your album in full, then, or do you want to play your new album in full? Or you could do a mix between the two.
I think it's a mistake to play your new stuff. And I've seen a lot of bands. I saw Paolo Nutini. I can't remember what festival he was at, and he played his entire new album that no one had ever heard, and he lost the crowd completely. So you stick to the songs people know, you play the first album in full, smash it through, and then everyone will be able to sing along, knows the songs.
Great stuff. All right, so Gallagher's Green are going to open the G Spot. They're going to play Lucky 13 in full. Then you boys can get on it and start getting smashed and enjoy the last 4 acts. So Gallagher's Green play from 2 till 3. We'll take a half-hour break. That will take us to 3:30. So, gents, who's going to take the difficult act in following Gallagher's Green?
It's not going to be easy. You don't mind me taking the first 2, John? Do you want to take the last 2?
Yeah, go for it.
So I would have, obviously, my indie, schmindy kind of vibes. I would have Tom Meehan doing his solo thing, followed by the new version of Kasabian, because they hate each other and they're going to want to try and outdo each other and play better than each other. So you're going to get the very best versions, the very best sets from Tom and from Kasabian. It would blow my mind. It would absolutely blow my mind. So have them 2 back to back. And you'd have to toss a coin on who went first, who went second, I think.
Ian, have you heard Tom's new stuff? Because I've not heard much of it. I mean, what's it like?
I'm loving it, yeah. And I went watching him, funny old thing, at the Ritz in Manchester about 2-3 months ago, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. He's really, really on form. He's coming back with a vengeance. And his new original stuff is really, really good.
Okay, great stuff. And obviously you've mentioned Kasabian already. They obviously mean a lot to you and are one of your favourite bands. Anything within that hour, because they've got quite a big catalogue now. They've got quite a few albums out. Anything within that hour that you're going to give them to play, that they've got to play? Any songs that are completely unnegotiable for you that they need to play for you?
Gosh, yeah. I think LSF and do you know one that they don't do enough of? Vlad the Impaler. They've kind of dropped that off the live set recently, so I would say I definitely want to see that. That blows the roof off any venue they play.
Great stuff. All right, so Tom Ian's going to be your super seconds, and then we'll have Kasabian in your Midway Madness slot. So a great first 3 acts. That leaves 2 acts to go. So, John, you get the difficult decision, or maybe the privilege, of getting a pre-headline act and a headline act. So, John, who are you going to have pre-headline your fantasy festival?
Yeah, so one of the bands I loved, sort of when I was transitioning out of that sort of hard rock phase into sort of more sort of indie type stuff, and they bridged the gap really well, were early Manic Street Preachers, Generation Terrorists, their first album, and then their third album, The Holy Bible. Just think they were on form, those. That era of Manics, playing those albums, just being
cool. Okay, so Manic Street Preachers going to be your pre-headline act. They get to play for an hour and a half. They'll play from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. Only the second time that the Manic Street Preachers have been picked, so they're well up for South America. They've signed up straight away. So that will take us to 8 o'clock. We'll take a half-hour break, and then your headline act get to play your fantasy festival for 2.5 hours, John. So who's going to headline the G-spot then?
I suppose it should be really cool and precocious here and name some really cool band. But we've mentioned Guns N' Roses all the way through. I think Guns N' Roses, their original lineup, Izzy Stradlin and Stephen Adler, and they play Appetite all through, and then they play Best of Illusion albums, and all those pumpkins together into it. Like that.
Okie doke. All right, so Guns N' Roses are going to headline your fantasy festival. So at 11 o'clock, after they've played their 2.5 hour set, they're going to bring on Manic Street Preachers, Kasabian, Tom Ian, and you guys are going to come out. Gallagher's Green are going to come out, and you all get to play as a collective, and you all get to play one song together to close your fantasy festival. Gents, any songs that you want to play with the artists that you've picked?
Can we just make it the easiest song ever to play? Because we'll have been drinking for about 10 hours now, and I probably won't be able to stand up, never mind play my bass guitar. Go on, John, what do you think?
I was going to say Blitzkrieg Bop, but no. But I don't know. Whenever I thought about this, I thought, right, it's got to be a big song everybody knows. And I was thinking, I don't know why it popped into my head. I was thinking Heroes. Not a big Bowie fan, but I love that song. That would be one of my choices. I don't know.
But the only one I could think of potentially, because they've been ignored a little bit in the set list, a bit of a nod to Oasis. I'd throw a bit of Champagne Supernova in there, and I won't mind hearing what Slash could do with the lead guitar on that. So I think that'd be pretty amazing. And everyone knows the words to it, or they think they do anyway. When you're drunk up, sing along to Champagne Supernova.
Fine. Do you know what, gents? I'm getting soft in my old age. You get 2 encores, so we can play Heroes, and then we'll go into Champagne Supernova. It's South America. I reckon anything goes in South America. I don't think they're going to care less, are they? So let's do that then. All right, so let's lock your fantasy festival in before any amendments are made. So we've got the G-Spot taking place at River Plate Stadium. Opening act are going to be Gallagher's Green. They're going to play their album Lucky 13. Super Seconds is Tom Ian. Midway Madness, Kasabian. Pre-headline, Manic Street Preachers. Headlining, Guns N' Roses. And in your encore, all 5 acts are going to play Heroes. And then they're going to play Champagne Supernova. Gents, that sounds like a fantastic fantasy festival to me. Are you happy to lock that one in? Are we locking that one in?
Lock it in.
Right. I'll book the plane tickets. And I'll see you boys there. That's what we'll do.
Yeah.
That's what we'll So, gents, before we finish up on this one, we've already mentioned the second album. There's obviously lots going in. It's an exciting time to be in Gallagher's Green. What does the next few months, the next year look like, ideally? And let's sell the next couple of singles to us and sell the second album and any live gigs that you've got happening.
Yeah, so the next single will be end of November. Ian's already mentioned it here with me. We've tried to release a different type of song with a different feel each time. This is where a song of sort of the age-old human condition of unrequited love, lost, grief, that type of thing. So we're going to release that one. Then we've got a couple of other surprises coming up. I don't know if you want to talk about the next one, Ian, the new year.
Yeah, we've got a song called Where Do I Begin? It's like a high energy kind of rock song, I suppose you could call it. It's only quite short. It's like 2.5 minutes long. We're thinking, everyone's going back to the gym in the new year. People need a song to like get them motivated. It's a real absolute thumper of a song to hopefully get people off the settee, get rid of the Christmas fat and squeeze and the Christmas booze straight away. And then the last single we're releasing before we release the album is a song called Young Man's Game. And I think this like subconsciously came from conversations me and John had, where the music industry, it's just all like young 18, 19-year-old lads, and we're convinced that they're only getting like record deals and stuff just because they look the part. You know, when they actually play the songs, we're not finding much substance in there. There's not much, you know, no one's playing Les Pauls anymore. There's no real distortion on the guitar sounds. And I just kind of wonder what lads of that age can really write about. You know, what kind of life experience have they got? Me and Jon had this conversation loads of times, and then I wasn't consciously thinking about it, but when Jon heard the song, he was going, oh, that's about that conversation that we had there, isn't it? And it's just about kind of the world we live in. You know, we're a bit older, but we're doing this band. And I don't know, do we get looked over a little bit because we're closer to 40 than we are to 20? And maybe it's about that. Maybe it's about the kind of experiences that we've had up until this point. But that's, what would you call that, Jon? Like a bluesy, rocky kind of song?
That's a straight-up hard rock blues song with nasty guitar licks, and it's got a real groove to it.
Yeah. And then obviously, then it'll be followed up by the album, and we're just going to try and get on as many festivals as we can next year and carry on doing what we're doing, gigging, trying to get out and gig at least once a month, more if we can, and just keep spreading the word and, you know, putting our music in front of people and letting people know what we're all about.
Sounds fantastic. And if people don't know where to find you or currently don't follow you on social media, where can people follow Gallagher's Green for all the latest news and release updates?
Like Jon said, a great place is gallahersgreen.com. That's got links to all our social medias. We've got the usual places. We've got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, SoundCloud, everywhere. A lot of all our music is on Spotify and iTunes and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, Gallagher's Green. Stick us in Google and you can't miss us.
Fantastic. Brilliant. So that is it, everyone. Thank you for listening to the 107th episode of the Fantastival Podcast. And if you've enjoyed this one, please subscribe and give the podcast a review on iTunes, or go to Spotify and rate the show. And remember to recommend this pod to all of your families and friends. Gallagher's Green are on social media, so it's this very podcast. So give us a follow if you're on Twitter. You can find us at FantastivalP, or you can email the podcast at fantastivalpodcast@outlook.com. Unfortunately, we can't play music on this podcast, but I'll get some tracks from Ian and Jon, and we'll make a nice little Spotify playlist of the acts who they've spoken about in this one and who they've picked for their fantasy festival. So, gents, you've been fantastic guests. How have you found being on the Fantastival Podcast and talking all about your music and the music that you love?
Brilliant.
Absolutely loved it.
Really relaxed. Yeah.
It's been
really, really relaxed, mate. Yeah.
It's been great having you boys on. I love Memphis. I hope you raise as much money as possible for it, and I'm excited to see the videos of the gig that you're doing in a couple of weeks. I'm sure that will be great, and the Superlatives who are supporting you are also a great band. So make sure if you live around that area, or even if you don't, get yourself a ticket for that one, because that's going to be absolutely mega. So I'll be back next week with episode number 108. So please make sure to join me. But until then, stay safe, my Fantastival friends. Please continue to spread the word. And that word is Fantastival. Thanks for listening.